Good evening, everybody. We're going to reconvene open session and start with our moment of silence and our Pledge of Allegiance.
Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Mr. Fulton, special recognition presentations? Thank you. Ms. Vickers, citizens participation? Thank you. With that, I'll entertain a motion to accept personnel.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Mr. Colick and seconded by Mrs. Tyndall. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to accept personnel addendum A.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Mrs. Martin and seconded by Mrs. Derrick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to accept personnel addendum B.
So moved.
So moved. Moved by Mr. Colick and seconded by Mrs. Tyndall. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from September 24th, 2020. So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Tyndall and seconded by Mrs. Martin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to accept choice requests for 2020-2021 good cause.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Derrick and seconded by Mr. Colick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to accept the CHEA Memorandum of Understanding.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Dr. Hanwell and seconded by Mrs. Martin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to accept administrative contracts.
So
moved.
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Tyndall and seconded by Mrs. Martin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Mr. Fulton.
Yes, I have a few things I'd like to mention this evening under my superintendent's report. And at the next meeting, we'll probably see Mr. Bassett, and at that meeting, he'll have a few updates for us. And one of those updates, he gave me some additional information about Rehoboth Elementary School being selected for an award, an Outstanding Design Award, National Architectural Magazine. So the more details coming about that, but I'd like Mr. Bassett to kind of share the information next meeting. I'd also like to just have a few comments about the opening of school. I guess we're more than 3 weeks in now, I believe, and I feel it's going very well. I want to once again give a big thanks to our entire staff, everyone from our bus drivers to cafeteria workers, paras, teachers, administrators, district level people, and our Board of Education. It really has been a team effort, and it's because of the team we have and the strength and the cohesiveness that we're able to open school for our students, which I completely believe was the right decision and continue to every day when I see our kids in schools. So I want to say thank you to everybody again. It's not easy. It's not getting any easier. But all the hard work that everyone's put in is paying off. Others are watching us. Others are visiting us. We've had several requests from not just Delaware schools, but school districts from outside the state of Delaware to come visit, walk, see how things work, how things don't. I had an opportunity at our our superintendent's retreat last week. We had time with Governor Carney, and during that time he asked for a few of us who are back in session to kind of talk about how it's going and our thoughts and lessons learned, challenges, those types of things. And it was interesting that I spoke, and Seaford superintendent, Woodbridge superintendent, the districts that are back in hybrid, they really said similar things, which was just seeing the students again sort of re-energize them. It was just really, it was probably the best opening they've had for that reason. I felt the same way, and a lot of you have as well. So we're able to kind of just share that with others, and also share what's going on with other superintendents. But overall, it's been very positive. A number of parents who have been extremely appreciative and thankful for their children being back in school, not just for the educational portion, but the emotional, psychological part of it. I've heard that several times from parents, just how they see their child responding differently and seem like they're back to themselves again, just because they're back in school and around other people. With that being said, we really, although things are going well, this is the last time that we can just rest on that and just accept that. We have to work harder. We have to kind of stay on things. We can't relax on protocols. We can't relax on what our expectations are in our schools, on our buses, everywhere. Because that's something that just naturally may happen after into something in a while, and it just seems like, okay, we got this. Well, we don't. We always have to think about it every day as if we don't have it, and we have to rethink how we do everything, walking in the hallways, lining up for things, eating lunches, whatever it is. So just want to kind of reiterate that, how important it is for the entire district not to relax just because things have gone fairly well so far. We can always do better, and we can always tighten up things and learn from, our lessons throughout the days. We have had, to this point, 3 weeks in, 3 students test positive and 4 staff members test positive, which obviously 7 more than anybody wants, but it's also only 7 with 6,000 students and 1,000 employees. So we continue to work with that, and I mean the positive part of that is that each of those situations did not occur in school. The infections took place outside in the community, and once identified, then we removed those individuals from our schools, whether they're students or staff, for the time to quarantine. So that's also a very positive thing, that in the 7 cases we've had, there's been no spread within the buildings. That's all we can ask for. I do want to thank you, everyone, for everything you're doing to reopen our schools. I do want to just briefly mention facilities. Obviously, we have a lot going on, and at this point, if we have requests from the community to use our facilities outside, then we have permitted that following all the guidelines expected by the state and DPH. If we have requests to use indoors at this point we're holding off on indoor usage for our facilities. We have a lot going on. It's a lot on our staff, our custodians, and it's just a lot more risk when things are going on indoors that we aren't completely controlled of. So we want to just hold off a little bit longer for that. It's not saying we're not going to, but we have a few things that have been kind of being planned for November, December, January, and we're telling those people not no, but right now no. And closer to that time, give us a date. We'll let you know whether or not that can occur or not. But right now, we're just holding off on that for safety reasons. Also want to mention at the next meeting, Ms. Nong will be presenting class size waivers for over the 22 per class. It's something the state is still requiring us to do, and the reason that we have to do it and are going to bring it to you is because some of our remote classes are larger than 22, and you have to cover ourselves based on the law. So we're bringing that to you at the next meeting. And also want to just update you on Osher Lifelong Learning. Because of the budget cuts, the University of Delaware, they have requested to sort of exit their lease at the Fred Thomas building. So we have granted that waiver. We've granted the release. There were things written into the contract that allowed us to collect money if they leave earlier, and our recommendations, we do not do that. We just said thank you very much. You've been great neighbors and partners with us. So at this point, they'll be out of the Fred Thomas building, so they could create more space for us if we need something in the meantime. And the last thing I want to mention is athletics. We've been practicing athletics now for, it's our 2nd week, I believe, of practices with competitions coming up. And something that was brought up at the last meeting was middle school athletics. I spoke to our athletic director, who has been in contact and conversations with our middle school principals, and at this time I'm recommending that we don't move forward with middle school sports for the fall. But the group of administrators and athletic director in that office, they're going to start planning and looking into how winter sports could look for our middle schools. Everything from transportation to physicals to training for staff and those kind of things. There's a lot going on that's much different now than it was before. And I know the athletic season for middle school would end late November anyway, so even if they started and kids got physicals, it'd be 4 weeks into something. And there's really, I mean, it would be pretty much practicing because there aren't even many teams to play against if we wanted to play in games. So it's not ideal, but we just kind of need to take things slower, and just doing the high school and the high school sports is plenty enough for us right now. But it does, obviously, it's not great in some ways because those middle school students could benefit from that as well. Just we don't want to take too much on too early. So I do want to mention that this evening as well. And that is all I have this evening.
Thank you. I believe you're still up, though, with our first regular agenda item, elementary school enrollment areas.
Yes, I am. And I was going to yes, thank you. Tonight I want to have some information for everybody regarding enrollment areas for elementary schools and just sort of like summarize what's been going on. I want to talk about the history of our enrollment areas, the current enrollment for our schools and what that looks like. And I want to talk about the enrollment areas and then why we want to make these changes and need to make these changes to our elementary enrollment areas. Presenting tonight, presenting this again next week, at the next meeting, and then again in November. And the thought is that we will be kind of ready to go by November to take action. If not, we still have one meeting in December that we can use if needed. There'll be opportunities in between these other meetings for feedback. Our district team is meeting next week to sort of format and discuss more about how we're going to reach out and communicate this information to our families, how we're going to receive feedback from those families, like public meetings, how many, how we're going to handle that with COVID, those kind of things. So we're going to work out those details just so everyone has a chance to sort of hear what's going on, that we have a chance to hear what our parents and our staff have to say about some of our recommendations and what we're thinking with enrollment areas for elementary. History of enrollment areas goes back to the 16-17 school year when we had to go to 5 enrollment areas because of Love Creek Elementary School. We added our 5th, and we looked at trying to balance the numbers and all the schools, and also the economics, the socioeconomic status of students attending to those schools. There was a time before Love Creek came on board, there was a large disparity between low-income numbers of students in some schools versus others, and large gaps. So that was one of the focus areas as we looked at the enrollment areas in the 16-17 school year. Just looking back at some numbers, when we were doing that at the time, you can see the low-income numbers at H.O. Birmingham, Milton, Rehoboth, and Shields. You can see 58, 29, 36, and 27 were the percentage of low-income students that attended those schools. And I just looked at the information again on our school profiles, which is the most recent, which is last school year's. You can see those same numbers in each of our schools, 29, 30, 25, 21, and 21. So you can see the difference between the lowest and highest is 21 to 30, so 9 percentage points. Back in 14-15, the difference was between 27 and 58, 31% difference between the schools with the percentage of low-income students. And with that work, we created these boundaries, which we're currently using today. These are our 5 enrollment areas: Rehoboth in the south, Love Creek, Shields, and then MES and HOB. Recently, the University of Delaware and John Lasnik prepared this document for us. It's sort of a working document that we'll use as we look at our current attendance zones. And so this is the same as we are now. You can see where the green on top is MES, and those students travel down to the MES green zone. And you have the tan, which is HOB, the red, which is Shields, yellow Rehoboth, and purple. We looked at enrollment areas again in the 2008 during the 2018-19 school year, and primarily it was to look at only Love Creek Elementary School. Love Creek was growing quicker than we thought it would grow with students, so I was proposing at the time to decrease the number of students at Love Creek for the fall of 2019 and send most of those kids to Rehoboth Elementary School, which is going to have a new school in the fall of 19 and additional space that can handle that and relieve some pressure from Love Creek. There was quite a bit of opposition to that move at that time, and most of that was around the timing of it. A lot of those students had just moved from Shields to Love Creek, and then some of them had to move again, and the majority of community parents that were in the meeting sort of asked us to consider just holding off until the fall of 2020 to do all 5 elementary schools at the same time. So that's what we decided to do. We could either make the change now for 60 to 120 students, or we could wait and do it in the fall of 2020. So here we are, fall of 2020, and we're at it again. Mr. Lasnik, University of Delaware, just sent us a recent update of our map and our attendance zones. I think you can probably see it on your screen. There you go. It has our 5 attendance zones, and it has little dots inside each of those areas, which are where students live. And you can see that there's some. Let's look at the green area where MES is. There's some red dots in there, and there's a blue dot in it. Those are students that live in that attendance area, but they attend a different school because of school choice. So we'll use this map to sort of decide how we're going to redivide the attendance boundaries to better balance things and to better, mostly it's Love Creek Elementary School, which has the most, and it's going to be moving students to Rehoboth and moving some students to the Milton schools based on the numbers. As you can see, we have grown again this year. This is unofficial. We used to have a September 30 count, and this year we don't have a September 30 count. It's going to be a November something count, and we aren't quite there yet. So you can see we have grown again, but not as much as we did the previous year. So we still have issues, but fortunately, based on a chart I'll show you in a second, the elementary schools did not grow as much, or some schools didn't grow. Some schools actually have a few less kids, which is a good thing. I know that our elementary schools and the middle schools probably feel this now, but we had really 2 large 5th grade classes in our elementary school, one at Shields and one at Love Creek, I believe. And those students leaving really made a difference in the numbers overall in the district for elementary school. This was something that we looked at in the past. In 2017, we looked at Love Creek, and we knew they had 619 students in 2017. And then we predicted out what they would have in 2019 and 2020. I only point this out because that 706 is where we thought Love Creek would be at this time. And I believe the numbers as of today are 703. So not too far off. That was 3 years out, the projection. So it's definitely time. Obviously it's unfortunate, but this school year and with COVID and having only a certain percentage of students in the schools, it's in some ways it's made it better, especially for some of our schools, including Love Creek, for spaces. So elementary enrollment trends. And I pointed out that elementary schools enrollment have decreased as of now. We don't have an official September 30 count yet or November count yet, but you can see between 2019 and 2020, we believe there'll be 24 less students in our elementary schools. MES with 1 less student, HOB with 3 less, Shields with 36 less, Rehoboth 15 more, and Love Creek 1 less. So which is a good thing. Kind of buys us another year, even when students come back. If hopefully they do this year. If they don't, we'll work through it. But if they do, there are less students overall in our elementary schools. I don't foresee that happening year after year. there were like probably, I think 2 of those 5th grade classes, probably 20 more students than the other classes in each of the schools. So that did make a big difference. So I do want to point that out, that our elementary numbers have remained. But what's interesting is our district enrollment still increased. So if our elementary numbers went down and our district numbers went up, then it's others kind of taking even more of a hit and more of an increase in the numbers of students. So we just talked about the map again. We're working with John Lasnik in the University of Delaware, and he has started to work on, we sent him eSchool data, so he has information about our students, where they live, addresses, and he's putting together maps for us. And then from here, as our team meets, we'll have different scenarios we'd like him to think about and put into practice, and kind of work those maps and those dots in those maps to better reflect maybe some ideas that we can kind of start sharing with the public and the parents. So that's what we're going to be doing this week. We're going to be meeting on Monday, then again probably on Thursday internally, be talking to John Lasnik about what we'd like to see, sort of some models in place so we can start sharing those with our parents. John's going to visit the district by himself and drive around, because John's been checking a lot of the information from Sussex County government and looking at the number of applications for new developments, how many residential units that may mean, how many building permits have been filed, those kind of things. And he's going to drive around and see where those places are, and to see how far along some of those places are, whether they're moving dirt, whether they aren't, whether nothing's happened there yet at all. Sometimes he tells me it's hard to know exactly where they are in the process just by looking at a piece of paper, so he likes to put his eyes on some of these developments. Sometimes it's hard for him to understand and know based on the document whether it's a 55 or older community. That impacts sort of his projections and where we are and where we go with things. Numbers up here to kind of just indicate where things are, what's been submitted. And what we do see here is there's activity everywhere, especially with the number of residential units, especially Love Creek. But we also, it's very quick to notice that Rehoboth Elementary School's attendance zone does not have as much as everybody else. So it would be my thought as we go into this to sort of recommend to our team that at least a few of the models have Rehoboth starting with more students than the other schools. Love Creek starting with the lower amounts if we can, and push more kids and move attendance boundaries to have kids go to the Milton schools and to a few more to Shields possibly. But it's more about relieving Love Creek and their numbers here and trying to find the best way to do that in what communities. So that's primarily where we are. We have a lot of work to do. I appreciate Ms. Tyndall, Dr. Myers, helping our district team. Ms. Nama, we're going to include a few parents in our conversations internally, parents of elementary school students in the district, and then it'll help us when we go out and try to explain things to our parent groups in each of the schools and what we're thinking about. It'll help us to have although we have elementary parent perspectives on our board, it's also good to have those who aren't board members, to also share their thoughts about what they think people are thinking and what some of the ideas could be. Do any board members have any questions at all about this information? Okay.
Not yet.
Thank you.
Quiet group this evening. So before we go on, I'm just going to take a second for Dr. Hudson to check the sound. Apparently it's not working on Zoom.
I mean, everything I said wasn't recorded. I'll do it again.
Say it all over again.
Oh, very good.
Is there something else that you want me to push on my computer, Dr. Hudson? Okay. Okay. The trap on, thank you. All right.
Or not trap on.
We'll give it. Say testing, testing.
You can't see the picture right now. It's from the buddy walk. Not the buddy walk. I'm saying Walmart. Okay.
unplug and plug back in? Do that. Oh. But it's red. It's on TV. That's on, I can see you. No, it's mine. It's hooked to mine. Yep, it's unmuted on mine. We'll see. Good. Testing, testing. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. All right. Next up on our agenda, 2020-2021 district calendar. Mrs. Nauman.
Good evening, everyone. We have a couple changes to our calendar just to make note. Most of these changes are in June, so if you go down to the June area of the calendar, we are not having final exams this year. We changed to our block scheduling this year, so classes are half one semester, half the other. So we don't need exam days. We still are keeping June 1st through the 3rd as senior half days, but their contingency days will be in the afternoon. So say we have a big snowstorm or something like that, there's some extra days with hours built in. So the seniors have those days. We are also taking away the 14th as a half day for 9, 10, and 11 because that was for exams. And the last day will remain on June 15th as a half day. Anybody have any questions?
If there's no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the district calendar as presented.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Dr. Hanwell and seconded by Mrs. Mal Martin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Mrs. Nauman, strategic planning.
Okay, this is just a quick update for you tonight. We finally have kind of drilled down our strategic plan into our different layers, and we're looking at our key performance indicators now. So I just kind of wanted to show on the website where it is now. You have the information in your board packet, but if you go to our district and to district resources, click on that. You have a nice landing page here that comes up with our Cape Promise and mission, which looks great as we come through. And then our actual strategic plan is right here. It has each of our goals, and these are clickable. It's starting to come. I had this vision a couple years ago what this may look like. It's getting closer and closer. But you click down, you can see what our goal statements are for each of our goals, what our strategic objectives are, which I've gone through with you for our healthy school climate, academic excellence, and of course our equity and inclusion goal. And then even moreover, now we have key performance indicators that hit grade bands. And if you click these, they get bigger. But you've seen this page. But let's click on the middle school, for example. So these are the middle schools. It's for Mariner and Beacon. And we have our beautiful goals there. Oh, look at these learners. And then our strategic objectives. And then it gets down. It's kind of hard to see on the big screen. But you get down into our actual key performance indicators. What are we looking at to measure these goals? And this is the information that we're using. So some we already have the baseline for, some we're collecting the baseline, but we are working with our principals and continuing to work with Hanover to collect this data so we can see how we're doing in response to each of our goals, each of our objectives based on these key performance indicators. And we have these for each of our grade levels now, which is great. Back here, and then here's Cape Highs. And the schools have it broken down for each of them. They'll have this information, but as a district, we're going to have it by, obviously the high school, it's its own entity, so it's out there. Then the elementary schools are together, along with the middle schools are together in one document. So any questions about this? And I'll keep you updated as the data comes in, as things are going along. We can have an update every few months or whatever, but we wanted to make sure you knew where it was and had the key performance indicators out there.
Great. Any questions or comments from the board? All right, thank you, Mrs. Nana.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Mr. Fulton, Board Policy 207, School Choice Program, Order of Consideration.
Yes, we discussed this briefly at the last school board meeting. Obviously, typically at this time of year, we make some decisions on sort of where we're going to kind of like cut things off because of being a capacity in our schools. And I shared with you last time the possibility of considering sort of dividing one of the considerations into two different parts. Students who have resided within our district attendance boundaries for 2 years or more and have moved out, and students who have resided within our district attendance boundaries for less than 2 years. There were several years ago we had this in order to account for maybe students that moved into the district or attendance boundary and were there 3 months, 6 months, less than a year, then they moved out. And typically if students are in good standing, we allow them to stay. So the board at that time thought there should be different standards for the students that are with us for 3, 5, 8, 10 years versus ones that are with us for 1 or 2 or less than 1. So I just threw that out at the last meeting as a possibility. So I wanted to kind of just present both to you this evening. My thoughts after our last meeting is that I sort of prefer the way we've been doing it. The number of students that sort of are involved with sort of this and only be with us a short time and they move is so small it's even worth kind of getting into that level of detail. There were maybe there were more at the time when that decision was made previously, but if the board so chooses, we can use it again, but it's not my recommendation that we do so. When we do take action, I believe at the next meeting, correct? Or is it this meeting or next meeting?
We can take action on this
yeah.
at this meeting.
Okay.
We thought that we could possibly push it to next meeting if you chose to make suggestions for changes to the actual policy.
No.
So if we're not making any changes to the policy, all that we would be voting on tonight would be the level at which we are open to choice. Am I saying that correctly?
You are, yes. And I guess the point is that with school choice, we have to be very consistent in how we handle it, which students we approve, because there are different categories and considerations, and we just can't arbitrarily say yes to one student in category 4 or 5 and then say no to everybody else. We say yes to one, we say yes to all. And if we don't have enough space for all in that category, then we have a lottery. So that's sort of how it should work or has to work in order to be fair. So typically the board has decided that if a student's good standing, then we'll accept any student to a certain point. But below that, the answer is no for anybody. So that we're consistent. And in the past, we have not permitted students to move or to choice from one school to another within the district, unless there's a staff member involved or they have a sibling already attending that school. And we haven't also permitted students from outside the district unless they're in those same situations.
So you just omitted 2 year, the 2 year or less. I understand now what you were saying from last week. Now that I've given
Yeah.
highlighting it. So you submitted 6 and 7. So
Yeah,
it's not
6 and
just
7 were in a previous policy like years ago, and I just brought it up so we wanted to at least show you an example, but so you can see it for yourself, what it said and how it was broken down between the two groups.
So that's from years ago. This is
Yeah,
not even
our
the current
policy we've been working with the last several years has not had that in there. But there was discussion about possibly bringing it back, so I at least wanted you to see it, and then we could discuss it. I wanted to at least get my recommendation on how to handle that.
But you don't want to do
I do
that.
not. I just don't think there is such a few number of students that are involved, and there's enough going on that we don't need to kind of get into how many months somebody's here and those kind of things.
Okay.
So your recommendation tonight under
Yeah, and under order
Sorry,
of
the drawing.
considerations would be down through 5, which is children of current full-time permanent employees.
Which is what we have done for.
This is what we've done for the last several years, which has really helped with our school choice and our numbers and slowing those numbers down. Yes.
So I will entertain a motion to approve the order of consideration for school choice through number 5 as recommended by the superintendent.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Mr. Colick and seconded by Dr. Hanwell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Mr. Gladfelter, Board Policy 512, Evaluation of Support Staff Employees.
So I'm here this evening to share this for the second time. And just as review, there's nothing any different from last time. All we're looking at is the dates. Consider changing them to April 30th. And just as a quick reminder, it was just due to the fact that the teachers, or the principals, the administrators do the DPAS 2 predominantly in the fall and the winter, and this will give them more time to complete these evaluations. Sometimes there's new custodians, chiefs, and secretaries in buildings at the start of the year. It will give the admin some more time to get to know them prior to evaluating them. Sometimes there's new administrators assigned to buildings at the start of the beginning of the year, and it would give them more time just to get to know them, just as I said the other one. And it would be easier to keep track of all employee evaluations since they would all be due April 30th. So we're just asking that all the dates be April 30th for all of the support staff evaluations. And due to the fact that one of them is coming this week, October 15th, the others are the 30th, I was just wondering if the board would consider taking action on this evening.
I think we would, sir. It's on there as a discussion/action. So does anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Gladfelter before we call for a vote? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve Board Policy 512 as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Martin and seconded by Mrs. Tyndall. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gladfelter. District athletic events admission fees, Board Policy 904.
Yes, let me bring this up to you this evening. I apologize. It should have come to you before tonight. Board Policy 904, there's a section of that that says before June 30 of each year, the athletic committee will recommend to the superintendent the admission prices for athletic events. Superintendent or superintendent's designee will present the recommendation to the Board of Education for their review and final approval. So it's something that we used to have different prices in our policy, and every year we change our policy. We sort of decided a few years ago, changed to this model where I would receive recommendations from the athletic committee, and then I would present those to the board for your consideration. So this year has been kind of unique in a lot of different ways. And the new athletic director, obviously everything going on with the COVID pandemic. And we've been talking a lot about athletics over the last several weeks, and I've been more involved with athletics than I probably have been in 9 years, just making sure that everybody has what they need, that the team feels like they're supported. But I will say they're doing a great job. The athletic department is just not really knocking it out of the park. And really kind of, when they come to myself or Ms. Nauman, they have plans, they have ideas, they're organized with things, and really they're doing a wonderful job. So I want to point that out. And I had a conversation with the athletic directors and also the high school administration about this topic. And I have my opinion about that, and I wanted to share it with them and then get their thoughts. And as far as prices for athletic events. And this year, after discussions with the athletic director, assistant athletic director, and high school administration, and following years, we'll do things differently with committees and be on time with this, but given the circumstances, I apologize again. But it's my recommendation that, given our current circumstances, that we do not have any admission to our athletic events. I think there's enough going on with trying to organize athletic events and monitor and make sure all the protocols are in place. We don't want to exchange money, trying to organize passes and those kind of things. It would be just one additional thing. And also with the number of, to start the season anyway, the number of families or representatives, people come to see the players or participants will not be as many as have been in the past. So in some cases, would cost more to hire the workers that collect money or collect passes or look at passes versus how much money that we'd actually make from the games. And families have enough going on with everything in their lives too, and finances, that we thought it made sense at least to start this year, unless something changes, start the year with admission 0 for any sporting event that we have.
Just to clarify, no cost, but they can still attend, or
Yeah.
no attendance.
Yeah, we're working on, we're going to start the year with 2 per participant as far as spectators, and then kind of feel it from there and see how that goes. So anybody that would be there to see the participants play or perform would not be charged to get into the games.
The
So-
Myers family.
So you're actually controlling the entry, so it wouldn't be a free-for-all, because that would have.
Now, we'll have to have plenty of
How many
controls at the
free?
entry, so we're going to have to be doing COVID testing. We're going to have to be screening people, temperature checks, make sure masks are on when they walk in and when they're in the games and those kind of things. So there'll be plenty to do as far as the control of the entry. It just, part of that control won't be collecting money from anybody.
What about visiting teams? They
There will be no visiting teams at all. That's another reason we don't collect money, because as superintendents, we determined, at least for the fall season, that we wouldn't have any visiting spectators.
Okay.
Something we can control easier. We know the people, we know our
Right.
community, we know the parents, and so on and so forth. It's a good question. We should have brought that up too. And it's nice when our superintendent groups, at least for the Hennepin Conference, we're on the same page with at least starting the year with no visiting spectators. I know it's not ideal. With the numbers of seats available and the social distancing, we want to make sure we prioritize at least our home fans and those kind of things for the games. And
makes sense.
Do you want to mention anything about that? I'm going to say the name of it wrong. The Pixel, the camera live streaming.
yeah, I'm not sure what it's called, but we signed on this past late spring, early summer. We'll be live streaming our athletic events as well. So there'll be opportunities for family members who maybe can't see the game, or maybe they don't even live in the area, they live out of town. We'll be able to see their grandson or their niece, nephew, or children play even when they can't. So I don't know how many of our away games will have that, but many do. I know I've talked to a few superintendents that do have that streaming capability right now. So we'll have to get more information to our parents about that. And it may just be, I don't know how it works. I'm assuming it's one price for like whether, whatever game it is. If other districts have bought into it, we'll have to find more about that, make sure our parents understand that. But there'll be other opportunities like that with the streaming to see the games that we've had in the past.
So do we need to take action on that?
We do, yeah. We need to take action that my recommendation is the admission price for athletic events will be 0 for all athletic events until otherwise changed.
I'll entertain a motion. Oh, do I have any questions or comments before we go to a vote? Did you have something you wanted to say? Okay. I'll entertain anything on this side? Sorry, I'm looking over this side. I'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent to set an admission fee of 0 for this fall's sporting events. Moved by Mrs. Derrick and seconded by Mr. Colick. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Yeah, I would like to just, you mentioned fall athletic events. It's 4 athletic events throughout the year until it's changed by vote. So
Well, then we'll redo that now that we're all sitting here. I'll
not
entertain
just
a
the fall.
motion
It
to
could go into
accept.
the winter, so.
I'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendation of Mr. Fulton for a $0 admission fee for athletics for as long as COVID is in place.
So move.
Second. Moved by Mr. Colick and seconded by Mrs. Tyndall. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Sorry about that, guys.
Big commitment.
Thank you.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Tyndall and seconded by Mrs. Mulmartin. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
I just got